You're listening to the Listen Up Show, Startup Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Mitchell Chadro, your host, today on show 047. Today, we're here with Retireholics Plan Design founder, 401k retirement guru, J.D. Carlson.
If you want to do something, you want to accomplish something, you got to put the plan in place to do it. And there's lots of things that I want to do to make my business better, to make my life better, and I'm trying to take steps every day to make it happen. So don't sit around, don't dream about it, you got to get it done.
Listen up, trusted friends. It's your business, it's your family, it's your life. Now let's get started. Please sign up to my email list for the latest special offers exclusive for our Listen Up Show Startup Entrepreneur Podcast audience at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. I have been providing business advice, resources, and help to entrepreneurs for over 20 years, and I'm looking forward to helping all of you. Sign up for my email list, again, at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. I will provide you with full transcript for each interview, my ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, the Startup Checklist, and many other education and training materials, all back at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. Now enjoy the show. JD is the CEO of Plan Design Consultants. That's Rockin, Smart, Easy, Awesome, and he's the host of Retireholics. How you doing today, JD?
I'm very good. Wow, you've done your homework and prep for this interview. You know all about me.
Well, you know what? That's what it's all about. You got to be prepared, right?
That's good. That's good. I am doing great. Thanks for asking. Surfer here, living in San Diego, and summer's about to begin, and living the dream of a retirement plan professional, as you mentioned.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because I see here, and you just mentioned that you're a former professional surfer. So how do you go from a professional surfer to a retirement planning guru? Everybody wants to know.
Great question. Well, your father asks you when you're, 12, 13, 14, what you want to do in life, and you say you want to be a professional surfer. He tries to convince you to take over the family business, which is a retirement plan third-party administration firm. You say, heck no. He asks you again when you're 20. You said, no way do I want to put on a suit and tie and do that. He asks you again when you're 25, 26, and you say, geez, I don't think so. And then you get married, you have a couple kids, you're running a surf shop in San Diego after your failed professional surfing career has ended, and the expenses start to mount up, and your wife's spending more money than you're making, and so you call the old man and say, hey, let's talk about that business, that family business again. So, you might say I went into it for the wrong reason, but which was, to support my family and kind of get on a better career path, but it all worked out for the better, and I really do love what I do. So the answer is family-owned business. I fought it off as long as I could, but then I eventually went in to take over the reins.
Well, that's awesome. It says here that, of course, you just mentioned that you're married, you're a husband, and, of course, you're a father. And so having your own children, I guess it comes full circle that maybe Dad was right when he first spoke to you about this back when you were 12 and 13 and 14 in your 20s?
Yeah, I mean, you speak different languages when you're at those ages, but he was an entrepreneur. He started the company in 1975, and I think he knew all the great, cool things that come with running your own business and probably wanted the same for me. I was just on a different path at that time, but I came in, got involved, kind of followed in his footsteps, shadowed him for a couple of years, and I caught on to it really quickly. I love running the business. I love everything that goes along with being an entrepreneur and the excitement and the creativity and all that stuff. So, yeah, I think Dad had the right plan. It just took me a while to get on board.
Our startup round. For all your hosting needs, head on over to mitchellchadro.com/hosting. mitchellchadro.com/hosting for all your web hosting needs. Who do you use to host this website? There's textbook, what an entrepreneur is, and then there's shadowing somebody like your dad, who really sounds like he's the real deal. So can you tell us what you've actually learned from your dad and how he's actually built up the business over all these decades?
Yeah. I think that's actually a pretty interesting story because my dad and I, although we have a lot of things that are alike, there's a lot of big differences. And the first thing I want to say is kudos to my father because I've seen, in my course of work, a lot of family businesses, second generation, third generation, and a lot of times there can be lots of pitfalls, a lot of arguments, a lot of, not getting along. And my father was very much the opposite. And from day one of me coming in, knowing very little about his business, he pretty much handed me the keys to the car and was like, okay, learn from me, follow me, shadow me, as I mentioned, but keep your brain on it and think about how you're going to change it and how you're going to make it better. And so my dad was really cool in that aspect of bringing me in, but letting me know that this was mine to make changes, to run as I saw fit. And I thought that made for just a great relationship. Now, what's interesting about that is my dad is very much a micromanager. So I'm a different CEO and president than he is. He's very old school. He's very deep into the details, micromanaging, standing over his employees. And so watching him do that, I learned, but then I'm just a different type of character. And so probably touch on a little bit later, but
tell us about those challenges, because obviously those two styles kind of clash or don't necessarily match. We talk to a lot of partners and people that are bringing people into their business who don't necessarily either see, they have different skill sets. One has a strength in one area and the other one maybe has a strength in some other area. In this case, he brings you in, he says, come on, go run this thing, and yet his personality is quite different than yours. So how did you manage that?
Well, again, hats off to him, right? I think he was very aware that we have different personalities. I was surely aware of it. So I tried to learn from him and see how he did it, but at the same time understand that I was going to kind of do it my own way. And so, there's many different ways to skin a cat. And so just watching my father do it the way he did, and it's not like I didn't take away anything from him. I took away a whole lot. He's very attentive to the details. He's a very compassionate person, and I took a lot of those skill sets from him. And I still to this day, because of him, stay very responsible on our numbers and our metrics and our financials, which probably didn't really fit my personality at the time. So I took that on from him. But when it comes to my management skills, I'm more of a empower my people, give them the confidence and give them the free rein to make moves and changes and make decisions and not being afraid to make mistakes. Where my dad was one that really made the decisions for everybody. So, hopefully I'm like not a perfect balance, but I'm a good balance of my father's kind of old school skill sets, and then I kind of have a different way of going about it myself.
Now, before we get into Retireholics, I know that you had mentioned that your dad had founded the company back in '75, and obviously he had a tremendous amount of detail. What is he retired today? I mean, is he one of your clients since you're running the show? What's he
retired? Yeah, he's retired today, so he's a classic grandpa playing tennis and golf. That's his biggest joke when I call him, is he wants me to ask him whether he played tennis or golf for the day. So he's in that classic retirement. He's big into woodworking now, so I get all kinds of videos and text messages of woodworking that I don't care to watch, but he's really excited about it.
Now, does he still active in the business? Does he have his own business on the side?
No, he's retired. I still, as his son, I call him. Usually if I have frustrations or something goes wrong, which, running your own business, you always have those days. And so he's kind of my shoulder to cry on, because he's the one guy who's been through it before, literally running the same business. So he's a great person for me to talk to if I'm having a down day or something. But no, he's 100% retired and, and the kid's in charge.
Tell us a little bit about the business. I mean, I'm very familiar with the retirement planning business and planning design and retirement management and relationship management in that space. That's why when I first saw your profile and I thought, wow, this professional surfer kind of now doing this, and I thought, wow, that's almost a tremendous leap. So take us in a little bit on your day-to-day, what you're doing, how you're developing the customers, how you're maintaining the business. Are you growing it? Are you just maintaining it? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, so we're what's called a third-party administration firm in the retirement plan space, and I hate to use major technical terms here, but we're also a non-record keeping one, which means we focus primarily on or solely on creating the plan document, doing the design of the plan, customizing the specifics of the plan, handling the annual testing that's required by the government, ADP testing, ACP testing, et cetera. And then we help prepare the IRS 5500. So kind of the nuts and bolts administrative work for the plan. That's our business model. The way it works is we channel through financial advisors. So I have a sales team. These are my guys in suits and ties, and they're also the cast of the Retireholics, which we'll talk about. But they run around and knock on doors and meet with financial advisors and then try to convince those advisors that we can help and we can assist them and make their business more successful in terms of them going after and retaining retirement plan clients. And so what comes along with that is, and our assistance for them is hopefully we get the job of being the TPA and handling the compliance work that I mentioned earlier. Am I looking to grow the business? Absolutely. So here's another cool kind of father to son. So my dad founded in 1975. Spent, the next few decades, as I mentioned, kind of micromanaging it, but also being the head salesperson, right? So very old school. My father was, the person out there gaining those new clients. And
he kind of did it all, right?
That's right. And it's pretty common for his peer group
to
be that way. And so when I got into it, and I did the same thing, followed in his footsteps, but then felt like, geez, if I'm going to grow this business, I can only do so much. And so I need to bring on other people to sell, to go out and share our story and bring on new clients. And so that's something that I've done in that transition. And so now we have a team of 4 sales guys that are out there, and I'm not selling. I'm more just looking at the kind of macro level business stuff, our financial metrics, decisions we're trying to make, kind of just, directing the company, where those guys are out there fighting to win new clients. So I'm growing it for sure. And so I'm not an obsessive compulsive A type that, just has to take over the world of retirement plans and pounding on my sales guys to hit new quotas. But I do enjoy the quote unquote game of it all. And I like us achieving goals and succeeding and having fun while we're doing it. So, I'm definitely trying to grow the business and accomplishing that. I mean, we're doing very well for us.
So tell us a little bit about Retireholics, because I also came across you after seeing you on LinkedIn, and I actually checked out the show, and I loved it. And I thought, wow, this guy has a lot of energy in a really interesting niche. We talk about ideas. Everybody in this space wants to do the investments and the investment management, and in the fiduciary space, that's the sexy side of the business. But yet there's a lot of opportunity in the administrative side, the retirement design and of course the plan designing. And I thought, wow, here's a guy with this personality who's doing this. So tell me a little bit about Retireholics.
Yeah, okay. Well, you talk about the surfer going into the financial space, and these things will probably tie together pretty well. But as I'm out there selling in the world and I'm in that suit and tie, I found that I was most successful when I was true to myself. I know it's a word that's used a lot, but if I was authentic and I went into that boardroom, whether I was, presenting to, a stodgy group of attorneys or, a nonprofit committee or whatever it was, I always felt like I had the best success if I was myself. And so as I continued and I taught that to our sales team for them to be themselves, they had success. Well, we were doing marketing like any other firm, seminars, workshops, webinars, things of that nature. And again, remember, our intended audience is financial advisors, industry pros, trying to convince them to seek us out so we can work with them. And those were working great, but I had always had people chiming in saying, we need to do some video stuff. We need to get some video marketing out there. And I kind of delayed and didn't get a lot of that going until one evening I was at our office in our conference room and having an informal get-together with my sales team like we would often do at the end of a week and talking about our opportunities, right? The meetings that they were at earlier in the week, or the meeting that they had coming up next week, or they had got pricing from this vendor versus this vendor, and they'd run into this stumbling block, or this client had this comment to say about that. And we would have these great discussions. Sometimes they would involve a whiteboard and putting down numbers, and maybe even an argument would break out, or, jokes would get thrown around. And it was just very unrehearsed and funny, and it was just a bunch of guys getting together talking about a business that they were passionate about, but also trying to, learn new things and create the best strategies we could. And I said to myself and to the guys, if our client or our advisors, our partners, were a fly on the wall for this get-together, they would love it. They would not only learn so much, they would see our passion, our enthusiasm, and we need to bottle this up. We need to film this. And so we attempted to film it, and it didn't really come out the way I had thought, and probably wasn't. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and going back to the drawing board was, well, let's create it in a show format. And so that is the Retireholics. It's let's get JD, the sales team of PDC, Justin, Mark, and Chad. Let's get them on a couch. Let's loosen up the vibe a little bit by having a beer of the episode. And let's talk retirement plan stuff that we think would be valuable and help improve the businesses of the advisors and the industry pros that are tuning in. And let's try to make it entertaining. Let's try to throw some comedy in there, some hijinks, some games, some fun. It's really our version or an alternative for people as opposed to logging in and signing up for a 45-minute webinar where some guy in a suit goes through a PowerPoint deck and, talks to you about target date glide path. I'm thinking, geez, wouldn't you rather open a cold beer with us, maybe laugh a couple times and watch it on video and learn something at the same time? So that was the idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome because, take a guy like me who started out as a tax attorney with a background in tax. That could be very boring. And so the idea is how do you make it exciting? How do you make it relevant? How do you make it so that it's engaging and people sort of want to come in? And I think taking the topic, of retirement planning and retirement design and doing the same with it really is very interesting, and I liked it, and I said, I want to reach out to this guy because I did see someone who was down to earth and someone who was also educating the audience in a fun, creative way.
Yeah, and kind of at the same time, I hate to admit this, but I like to rattle the cage of the financial services industry a little bit. Because, as I mentioned, as I went and saw those clients, those plan sponsors, and as I met with mutual fund companies and record keepers and financial services experts, and you would go to dinner with them, or they'd come to your house for a barbecue, you would realize that, once they shed the suit and tie and the perfectly combed hair, that these are normal people. They have rock bands they like and hobbies they do and maybe let out an obscenity from time to time, and they're really good people, but you don't necessarily see that in a point of sale or a boardroom. So there's part of me that kind of wants to shake up the industry a little bit and get us out of this button up mode, which I believe that the consumers, the participants, the plan sponsors would prefer someone coming in and being themselves as opposed to in this polished, black suit with a white shirt and a freshly ironed tie,
Yeah, no, certainly. And so that gets me to actually who your clients are. And obviously you mentioned it's the actual advisors. So some of the advisors that you're working with are extremely conservative. And so how do you want to, to thyself be true, and yet how do you sort of mirror, the style of the client with maybe a team that might all have the same personality, that are laid back, kind of fast and loose, which is perfectly fine, but might not necessarily fit the mold of maybe some of the more conservative clients that you might be trying to go after? How do you sort of challenge through that?
I think that's an excellent point and one that needs to be discussed. First and foremost, and I've always believed this, if someone Googles me, they're going to see it, I look like a surfer. I have a beard. I've got longer hair, and that's me being authentic to me. But if you as an advisor, if your natural state is in a perfect suit and with perfect hair and very proper, and that's you, then you need to rock that 110%, right? That's you being you. And all the advisors we work with, I'm always preaching that point. You can't pretend to be something you're not. That's just a huge mistake. So if you're button up and that's what you go with, and you do that, all the way to the end. And so I do believe in that. But additionally, I think to understand Retireholics, you also understand that it really still is a boring 401k show. What you should walk away from when you watch it is not that, oh wow, watch these guys, chug a beer or do something crazy, because really what you walk away from it is you go, these guys really know their stuff. They're very enthusiastic about their industry and their niche, and they live, breathe, and sleep this stuff. And so I think that that's the concepts you have to have regardless of your outer appearance or the approach that you're taking. There has to be that passion, right?
So over all these years that you've been sort of at the helm as president of the company, what would you say is some of the things that have contributed most to your success? What is it about JD that kind of sets you apart, that sort of differentiates you between you and, anybody else who's doing exactly what it is that you're doing?
Probably less about JD. I would answer that and say it's about hiring the right people, partnering with the right people, delegating the right things, and empowering them, to make change and make your company better. I think that has for sure been the key to my success is not to do it all myself. Find the right people, bring them in, and give them the tools and the freedom they need to help make the business better. Inspire them, for sure. Inspire them to be a good part of your team, but let people do it. And to me, that's been the fuel to our growth over the last 10 years without question.
Now, in your industry, there's all different types of clients, all different types of advisors, from the smallest of the small 1 or 2 person shop. They do a lot of financial planning, to registered investment advisors, to really, really big shops. So can you give us an idea as to the firms, the advisors that you're working with, how they look, what they look like, and where you're looking to sort of take the business, into the future in terms of who those clients are and how it's changing, how the industry's changing for you?
Yeah. So they vary for sure, but to give you kind of some context, our average client is somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million, with maybe 40 to 50 participants. That's our average client size. We have and bring on many that are smaller, and we have many that are much larger than that. My industry would call that the small and micro market. And I think if you really looked at my industry, you would find that TPAs like myself have a lot more market share in that small and micro market, let's say plans south of $20 million. Whereas you go upwards and you have plans of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, those tend to have less TPAs attached to them. So that's my niche. That's our market. We focus on advisors that are focusing in that space. They could be registered investment advisors. They can be independents with a broker-dealer. They could be people at wirehouses or advisors at wirehouses like Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley. And they can also vary from what I would call, experts, advisor shops that have, 30, 50, 100 plans. It's what they do. It's what they focus on. They're very good at it. As well as advisors that are dabbling in it, that have a handful of plans or are running across their first opportunity, a month from now. We position ourselves to support both of those in slightly different ways, but we're still of value to both of those types of advisors, and they come from all walks of life, as I mentioned earlier.
And so the plan itself is, yes, you're being brought in as a TPA, but it's the advisor who's obviously servicing that particular plan. And so that tells us a little bit about the size of the plan itself. But how about the size of the advisor themselves? So in other words, they're the ones who you have the relationship with, and they're bringing you X number of plans, let's say, per year. So how does that client look to you?
Yeah, so the advisors, we have some, like I mentioned, that are experts, and they may see us as a great partner for, 6 to 10 plans that they may do a year that they bring us. And those are great relationships. Those are relationships that we have to earn, and we have to continue to earn by supporting them and helping them succeed. But then we also have put out a net to tons of advisors all over the area that maybe only have a few plans, and therefore they only run into a new opportunity once or twice a year, and we want to be a resource for them as well. So there are some shops that are very well established. They've got very defined operations and support a large book of business. And then there are others that we support that have, 2 to 3 plans and really need our support to make sure that they're doing the right things.
Sure. Now, you're located in San Diego, as we talked about before, but in terms of where your focus is, I mean, you could do business anywhere, not just in San Diego or California. To date, are most of your clients then on the West Coast, or are they, throughout the U.S., or, how is that demographic changing, or how would you like it to see it change, over time?
Great question. So it is true. I am down here in San Diego in Carlsbad, and we have a sales guy down here covering Southern California. But our corporate office, or my corporate office, is in Foster City in Silicon Valley in the Bay Area, and then we've got sales guys up in that area. And so to answer your question, the bulk of our clients are in Northern and Southern California. And the reason for that is that's where our boots are on the ground, right? That's where we're really live and in color and helping people. But you talked about my visions for the future, and we talked about Retireholics. Well, Retireholics gets a lot of eyeballs on it across the country, and we get a lot of direct messages and LinkedIn messages and phone calls into the office with advisors from Texas and Florida and New York and Wisconsin inquiring about our services. And we do have, plans throughout the states. We have clients in Maui and clients on Oahu and clients in Florida and in Colorado. But the bulk of our business currently is in California. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm happy. Life is good. Business is good. There's tons of business in California for us to continue to grow and go after. But I love the excitement and the idea of doing more and more out-of-state stuff. And with technology and the way it is today, the reality is a TPA doesn't go face-to-face with the client in the ongoing process, anyways, in terms of administration. So we could service a client on the East Coast as well as we could service on the West Coast.
Absolutely. So in terms of the sales, I know that you have four sales guys there, and I know that you explained a little bit about what you do, and we talked about delegating. So what are some of the things that the company's not doing that you're sort of delegating to outside individuals or outside companies to basically help you service the advisors that you're sort of bringing in?
Okay, well, one of the biggest, most obvious ones is, since I mentioned earlier that we're a non-record keeping TPA. So
yes, correct, and that's why I brought up that question.
Good. Okay, good. So we're going to partner with record keepers. These are AKA large financial institutions like Nationwide or Principal, Voya, Empower, American Funds, Nationwide, John Hancock. These are companies that have built these packaged products for plan sponsors and for the advisors to help them service those plans. So those are huge partners that we outsource to. That's a big one for sure. Nowadays, you're seeing a lot of fiduciary services that can be another third party. So someone coming in to act as a 321 or a 338 and help that advisor with maybe a more organized, more bulletproof fund selection, fund monitoring process. There's lots of cool tech that's coming out these days that are kind of snap-on tech to these plans that do a variety of things around participant education and fund selection and stuff. So there's partners like that we work with. There's ERISA attorneys. So if things get really dicey or problems come up, we're going to reach out to some of our ERISA attorney partners, and they're going to help our clients. So we definitely can't do it alone. There's lots of those services outside of ours that we're working with.
No, that's awesome. And so you mentioned fiduciary, which obviously personally I know a lot about, but for those out there who don't know so much about fiduciary, there's also a new fiduciary rule that's probably coming out down the pike as the rule is getting looked at right now. So can you tell us a little bit about the fiduciary rule and how you kind of fit into that scheme?
Yeah, I mean, the fiduciary rule is a massive impact on the financial advisors and their broker-dealers for the non-RIA ones. And so if it's a big deal to them, then obviously it's a big deal to us because we're the ones supporting and working with them. It's a big deal to the record keepers on a lot of different levels, and they all have been scrambling, the last few years to kind of prepare for it the best they can. For us, we're a little outside of that because we're not really giving guidance on the investments and handling rollovers or even custodying assets, right? We're more working on the design and the testing in the 5500, so it's kind of non-investment related. But because it's a big deal to our advisors, we're trying to stay on top of it and support them. I'm not seeing a ton of massive change because the rule really centers around, doing what's best for your clients. And I believe in our industry, and I feel like that it has worked really hard to put those things in place even prior to this rule coming along. And so I feel like it's small changes. Now, this is a guy who's not running some multi-million-dollar record keeping. I'm sure it costs them a ton of money to make the changes. But I think in general practices out there on the street, it's small tweaks for these guys to comply with this rule. And hopefully they kind of were already,
Tell us a little bit about, since we're talking about retirement, even though your end client is not the plan itself or the individual who's in the plan, but in terms of your own business succession planning. So obviously you took over the business for your dad, and I don't know, day to day he might not be involved, but in terms of your own business succession planning, have you thought about that over the next, decade in terms of where you want to be in terms of that? You have children, and I don't know if they're interested in the business or not, but we'd be curious to delve into that a little bit.
Well, of course my children don't want to take it over. So my middle child is going to be a super famous rock star, and my youngest son is going to be a Major League Baseball pitcher.
There you go.
And my oldest is going to be some, super famous cook. And, I hope they all accomplish their dreams. I'm just making the point that, right now, do they want to be a 401k plan administrator? Heck no, they don't.
Like you did when you were 11 and 12, when Dad took you aside and said, "This is what I want you to do. What do you think?" And you told him, "No, I want to surf."
You got it. And do I love what I do? I do. But would I love to see my daughter become a rock star or a third-party administrator? I'll go with rock star, 10 times out of 10.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Now, but you asked about, succession plan, and I think about that. I'm 46 years old, and, something could happen to me, tomorrow or next week, and, got to live every day and appreciate it. So to give you a little bit of context, my wife is pretty involved. I mean, she helps me with all the finances and the payroll, and she hears me, gripe about things and talk about what's going well. And so I do think that, given dire circumstances where something happened to me, she could step in. I also, those guys that are on the Retireholi set, I consider them brothers to me. This is my sales team, Justin, Mark, and Chad. And Chad is a player coach, so he's our sales director. He's the boss of them, but also a very active producing sales consultant. And I have hopes and dreams that I've discussed with him a lot for him to continue to elevate his role and get into more of a senior level management type of role. So it could be more defined, but those are kind of the loose paths I have to the future. I'd love to surf more and work less. And as success grew, kind of hire more people to run the company. I don't have eyes on selling it for some large sum of money. But that could change 20 years from now. I don't know, but I like running it. I like watching it grow. And like I mentioned, I love empowering people and putting them in places and seeing them succeed and provide for their families and enjoy what they're doing. We haven't touched on that yet, but I guess the audience could probably guess, and Mitchell, you could probably guess. I mean, I'm a firm believer in work-life balance, and I want my employees, from my administrators to my clerical to my high-level sales team, to have a good balance in life. You only live once, And
well, in watching the show and just listening to you and reading some of your blog articles, I really did get that sense. And so this podcast is not just about business, but it's about business, family, and life. And it's about balancing all three, because if you only focus on one to neglect the other two, then what good is having money, let's say, or success in a business if you don't have a decent life or a family to sort of go along with it? At least that's my philosophy. And I know that a lot of people out there also want that type of balance. So it sounds as if you really live it every day.
I do, and I 100% agree with you. It's one of the things that I love about entrepreneurship is, having that flexibility, and I love the creativity of it. I just think there's nothing cooler than waking up in the morning and knowing that, you can create something or make a change or do something. There's a ton of excitement around that. And at the same time, I love being at the beach on a Wednesday at 1 o'clock. I love going to Maui and spending time there, but still banging out emails in the morning and then hanging out by the pool in the afternoon. I love spending tons of time with my kids. We recently took my daughter on like a 10 tour stop for this rock band that she loves. And, as an entrepreneur, I'm able to work along the way. And so it's like this constant balance. And I want that for everybody. And I want that for the people that I employ. And I encourage them all the time. I just had one of my sales guys at my house the other day, and I was asking him what he's doing the rest of the day, and he said, well, he was going to go back to the home office and bang out some stuff. And I'm like, you're down here in San Diego. Why don't you go have fun for the afternoon? So anyways, you got to. You only live once, and you're surely not going to be on your deathbed talking about the sales quotas you kicked butt on in 2017, right? You're going to be
I think that's awesome, and it's great to be able to work with someone and for someone who has that type of style. And that was interesting when you were describing your dad's philosophy and style. Not that one is right or the other one isn't. It's just a different way of approaching things, and I'm sure that your employees really appreciate that. Our fast pitch, MitchellChadro.com/books. For books, audio books, guest recommendations, and the books that I read to start up each day. Sponsors our Fast Pitch, my book club recommendations, back at MitchellChadro.com/books. To see more of my recommendations and recommendations of our guests, just go to MitchellChadro.com/books. It's your number one resource for book reviews and recommendations. In this next round, we actually call it our fast pitch, where I just ask you some really quick questions. It gives us another dynamic of JD, although we really have gotten a really decent flavor of who you are. But let me just ask you that an item that you have purchased for under $100 but has been the most impactful to you.
This might sound a little hippied out or whatever, but I recently purchased a hard copy book called The Law of Attractiveness, and it just helps me set down my goals and things I want to accomplish, and it gives you a lot of direction. Think about this, write down this, schedule this. What are the 3 things you want to accomplish here and there? So it's just pen to paper, and it was probably $19, I think. And it's just been a great tool for me to just remind me to stay on top of it and journal and do, think about my goals.
So everybody needs to listen up, because you don't have to spend a lot to sort of get a lot. And so that's really the purpose of that question. As far as a mantra or something that you would put right up there on a billboard that kind of motivates, kind of inspires, what would it be?
Motivates, inspires. Oh, geez, here I go again. But, make sure you're having fun. Make sure you're having fun with it. No matter what you're doing, you got to have some fun with it.
Yeah, no. As far as productivity goes, there's a lot of productivity apps out there. Can you recommend one for the audience?
So we recently moved to like the web-based version of Outlook, and my inbox on my phone now has it categorizes my emails as focused and other. And my IT guy could probably explain this a lot better. And I was very scared of it at first, because basically what it's doing is prioritizing, saying, hey, here's all the emails that are legit, and then we're going to take all these others that are potentially spam or, whatever the algorithm is, are not legit. And I used to scan through those others a lot, just making sure I wasn't missing something, and I still do a little bit, but it's really comforting for me to see this filtered list of emails
And this is just through Outlook, you're saying, or?
Yeah, it's through Outlook, and it's again, they have this kind of cloud-based version now, Outlook, with an app on my phone, and so it's filtering my emails, and I love it. Yeah.
Awesome. In terms of success, who could you say that you look up to as being a success, and how would you actually define that?
Well, I don't want to pull on the heartstrings, but there's my father, and as much as we differ in the way we go about it, he was a success, right? He provided for our family and gave us a great life and was running his own business, and so that was a huge huge example for me. But I'm really interested in like hyper successful people as well, which seems odd because I'm super laid back, but like I'm a huge fan of like Gary Vaynerchuk and everything that he puts out there. That he's like works 24/7 and.
Okay, I know that name.
Yeah, I'm inspired by people that are passionate about what they're doing. Heck, Mitchell, I get inspired when I take my daughter to a rock concert and I see the lead singer on stage doing his thing and making money at it and filling seats in stadiums. I'm like, wow, this guy's going for it. So anyone that's doing what they love and making it work inspires me big time.
So success is to you is what?
Success to me is, this is cliche, but doing what you love, right? If you, and maybe loving what you do, learning to love what you do. And if you do that, then you're never working, you're always having.
Sort of like how you came to love TPA business, right, plan design, and the retirement business.
I did come to love it.
In this wrap-up area, I wanted to ask you 3 main takeaways that people can sort of walk away with.
It is possible for family businesses to, understand each other's characteristics and work a successful transition. My father and I are perfect example of that. I mentioned it before, but I'm huge on this. Get the right people, look them in the eye, and inspire them to be part of your team. Give them the flexibility to run their own division, run their day-to-day, make some changes. Don't make them fearful of making a mistake. Let people run your business for you. And then third, as much as a loose, carefree surfer, have fun guy I am, don't get it twisted. I'm obsessed with our financials. I mean, I look at our account balance every day, what's gone in, what's gone out. I'm always tracking cash flow. I'm always looking at the financials because being an entrepreneur is great. There's so many positives to it, but there's also some negatives. At the end of the day, when you lay your head on your pillow, you're responsible for yourself, your income, and a bunch of other people. And
so it's interesting. So even though you were never really a micromanager, though when it does come to the cash flow, the money in and the money out, you really are on top of that, like Dad was.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
I had to learn that trait. That wasn't, that wasn't my natural state.
Yeah. Right.
But 100%. I don't know how you go about life. I would seem you'd be full of anxiety if you didn't know where your numbers were all the time.
I agree with that. It actually reduces your stress and reduces your anxiety to know where everything's at all times. Our wrap up round: MitchellChadro.com/photos. For all your graphic design needs. So in terms of how everybody's going to stay in contact with you, we thoroughly enjoyed this. We want to obviously reach out to you and keep in touch.
So you can go to plandesign.com, and find me there for sure. I am on all social media. The trick there though is whether it's Plan Design, JD Carlson, or Retireholics. So if you like fun stuff, you can follow Retireholics on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, and that's a great way to stay in touch with them, as well as watching our shows on YouTube. You can go to retireholics.com, and you can spell that with a K or a C. You'll still get there. And then, if you Google me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to kind of see what I'm up to. My blog, I didn't realize I had this laundry list of places to go.
Yeah. The great thing about having this laundry list, JD, is that back at MitchellChadro.com/show047, I'm not only going to have all the show notes, but I'm going to have URL links to every single thing that we talked about here today.
Well, it's going to be a long list, and don't forget my blog at Four01k.com, and that's FOUR01k.com. So
and you know I did my homework, so you know I already knew about that one, right?
Oh, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
The only thing that I want to ask just here in closing is there anything that you want to leave us with?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to say this to myself. So I'm not saying it just to the audience. I'm saying it to myself as well, which is, if you want to do something, you want to accomplish something, you got to put the plan in place to do it. And there's lots of things that I want to do to make my business better, to make my life better, and I'm trying to take steps every day to make it happen. So don't sit around. Don't dream about it. You got to get it done.
Awesome. Thank you, JD, for everything. There's a lot of value bombs in what you've said today, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people in the audience who are going to be listening up, and we just want to thank you very much for coming on to the Listen Up show, the Startup Entrepreneur Podcast. So thanks again, and let's be in touch real soon, okay, JD?
Thank you, Mitchell. I also want you to know that I watched listened to a few of the episodes prior to this, and now you have a consistent listener, so I'll be listening to your future episodes, so keep it up.
I'll tell you what, thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate it very much, and we'll be talking to you real soon.
Okay, buddy. Have a great day.
Hey, be good now. Bye-bye. In closing, let me ask for my listeners' help. First, please subscribe to my email list at mitchellchadro.com/signup. You will get all the full interview transcripts, my ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, where I talk about these free resources in show 006. You'll get the startup checklist, education and training materials, and other resources just by signing up at mitchellchadro.com/signup. Listen up, trusted friends. It's your business, it's your family, it's your life. Go out and live it. Back at mitchellchadro.com/signup, help me boost the rankings of the Listen Up show, the Startup Entrepreneur Podcast, by providing a well-written review in iTunes. mitchellchadro.com/iTunes. It helps other people find the show. If you actually need instructions on how to do this, you can find that back at mitchellchadro.com/signup. Thank you so much for subscribing to my email list and providing a written review on iTunes. Until next time.